All right, it's the end of April. We are going to talk about what's going on in August and September, though, with our good friend Chris Gordy of LockedOn SEC, and talk about the teams on Carolina's schedule. Which ones pose the biggest threat to them getting back to potentially double-digit wins and the college football playoff? LockedOn Gamecocks starts right after this.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler, and we have a great show for you today. Before we get started, you can see the game on in the background. A lot going on. We're going to get to that here shortly, but before we get started, I want to say thank you to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Listen, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LockedOnCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We're going to be joined by a very special guest as soon as he's off the phone. Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC does a phenomenal job. One of my favorite people in this entire industry. And we're going to be talking about the SEC as a whole. And biggest question, we're in the post-spring phase of the offseason. What teams on South Carolina's schedule pose the biggest threat to South Carolina moving forward? We'll get started with this in 1 second. Dun, da, da, da. Chris Gordy in the house. Gordy, first off, how are you?
Good, man. Good. It's been a fun couple of weeks here. You know, I know there's a lot of college fans that just don't care about the draft. You know, because they feel like, you know, once the guys move on, that's it. I know a lot of college fans. They're just like the diehard fans. They'd rather talk recruiting 24/7 than what happens to the guys after they leave their school. But I do think it is cool, you know, to talk. I mean, I've always been a big draft Nick, and it's always been fun to follow guys in college and see where they go. And I love watching all the SEC guys go off to the draft. And, you know, South Carolina had some history made. Ole Miss had history made. Texas, you know, more relevant than they've ever been when it comes to the draft. So it was a fun experience to see a lot of those guys go off to the draft. And now, you know, with the portal closed, at least in terms of entering the portal, you know, now we're going to see those last, you know, couple hundred guys who are still in the portal where they're going to end up. And, you know, it doesn't seem like there's any huge marquee names still. It feels like, you know, so shoring up a piece here or there, you know, will South Carolina pick up an extra D lineman here or there or whatever, you know, so that's kind of what it is now. And, you know, really start to turn the page here as we get into May. I mean, this is magazine month, right? Like this is where you start to get the Athlons and the Lindy's, and you really start to get into starting to, you know, the summer months with SEC Media Days and previewing the season that's coming.
Dude, I always talk about this too. I always think it's so funny, and it's funny bringing the magazine months because I love a trip to the store. Fun fact about me, guys, I love a trip to the store. I will
to get your Zins.
I don't think I need to get into Zins, but I will F up a 7-Eleven or a Quick Trip, and a trip to Lowe's or Publix is like a treat. I feel like I have to do like once a day because I've always lived in the city. So it's like for the most part, before I moved back to Columbia, I lived in like walking distance. There's like one time I lived in a high rise in downtown, and there was a Publix in our basement, and it was like the most like it was perfect. It's like, you know, if you wanted stuff from the store, you just go downstairs to the store. No, but I say that because it always cracks me up. Like once spring ball ends, you start this calendar of like trying to figure out what's next, and it's like, okay, you have the 100 days. That's in like 2 weeks. Then you have Memorial Day. Then you have magazine season, like starting up because now they're a little bit late because of the transfer portal. Then you have media days, and then it's like you start really getting into the countdown. So I'm fired up. Wanted to bring you on to ask a couple of questions, just post SEC stuff, or I'm sorry, post spring stuff around the SEC, and get your opinion on where South Carolina kind of stands. I asked this question to Mike Bratton the other day. And he had his answers. I think he had South Carolina like 9 in the pecking order of the SEC, right? Where would you have South Carolina ranked if you did a power rankings? Like where would you have them objectively speaking, in the post-spring power rankings in the SEC?
Yeah, I've seen everybody putting their rankings out. I mean, I guess you put Texas and Georgia at the top because they're the two that just played for the made the playoff, made the SEC championship game. I do think Texas has a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with Arch is going to solve a lot of those, but all the pieces around him. I mean, we just watched the draft where Kelvin Banks went 9th overall to the Saints. Jake Majors, their center, went. I mean, like, they lost a lot of guys that they have to, answer. I had somebody telling me that Trevor Gooseby is a big time, talent at tackle. And I'm like, well, let's see how he does in a full season as a starter in the SEC. So there's just a lot of question marks there.
Banks struggled last year, like at times. Like, that's a top 10 pick. He struggled in the SEC.
Yeah, I think what's interesting too is, you talk about the Ole Miss, who loses 8 guys to the draft, and Lane Kiffin's tweeting out, record number and all this. I'm like, it's a lot of experience, man. It's a lot of key guys from Trey. I mean, start with Jackson Dart, but Trey Amos, Trey Harris, Princely Omonmiel and Walter Nolan, all these dudes that were big time contributors for Ole Miss that are gone.
Right.
And I did an interview earlier today. Somebody asked me, is Austin Simmons the guy? I'm like, he might be in 2026, but I don't know if in 2025 Austin Simmons is going to be a top 5 SEC quarterback under Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. So, you got that. What's Bo Prabula going to be at Mizzou? The Mizzou back-to-back 10-win seasons. They repeat that. I mean, the schedule is still pretty doable for them. A&M, I think everybody bought in last year, right? Mike Elko, year one, oh yeah, and then we don't really talk about the collapse they had down the stretch. And what if that carries over? What if Marcel Reed, the clock struck midnight, he's not a great quarterback? So I just bring all this to say because I'm kind of talking it out.
Yeah.
South Carolina's got the hardest part figured out. You know who your quarterback is,
right?
That's the biggest problem. While Alabama and Georgia are going through quarterback battles, as good as they've been the last decade, I think South Carolina is right there, in the upper echelon of the SEC. But, I'll be honest. I think we got to ding Tennessee losing Nico. No offense to the quarterbacks on the roster, but that's a big loss because I had Nico taking
offense to him, Gordy. Offense to him, and if they're offended, good.
So I'd say all that to say I would probably here's who I would have ahead of South Carolina going into the season.
Yeah.
I'd probably put Texas just because of default. Georgia. LSU, I think, with what they've done in the portal and everything they've added with Nussmeier back, I'll probably keep them ahead of them. After that, I think you can make a real case for South Carolina ahead of Ole Miss, ahead of Mizzou, ahead of Tennessee because of them losing the quarterback. So maybe somewhere 4th or 5th. And look, if Ty Simpson is the guy and they're loaded with Ryan Grubb at OC, then Alabama will be right there. But just looking on paper going into the season, I'd probably have South Carolina. Let me go 5. I'll go 5.
Yeah, I think it's what's interesting to me is this. There's so many moving parts and how you want to look at it. I always start with the schedule, which is I think last year made a lot of sense for me, and it worked out to be a fair way to look at the schedule. You look at some of the teams going into the season, and I was pretty high on Texas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee were all going to compete for a spot in the playoff. I thought the 3 that were guarantees were Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia. They ended up all making the playoff. And a lot of it was because Georgia, I think, is going to be really, really good. But it's Texas and Tennessee, you're like, man, your schedule is cake. I mean, that's an easy schedule. So when I saw those two, it was like, and Ole Miss, it was like, I feel like you're just, it's a race to 10 wins, right? You're trying to get to 10 wins for a guaranteed spot in the playoff. And we saw that come out to be true. I think with South Carolina, it's interesting because I remember saying this last year, and I'll say it again for South Carolina, the schedule is always going to be the schedule. It's hard. You're not going to sit here and hear a South Carolina fan be like, oh, man, we have such a gauntlet this year. In the same way you're not going to hear an Arkansas fan or an Auburn fan because they're just used to it at this point. It's it seems like it's always like that. I do look at it and think, okay, where do you start from? If I'm going to rank, what's the foundation of where I'm going to start looking at these teams? Is it quarterback play, which makes a ton of sense because then you have some teams like South Carolina, for one, that has a great quarterback coming back, maybe the best one in the country, or LSU with Garrett Nussmeier and situations like that. And then you look at another place where you're like Ole Miss, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Bama. Those are 5 teams that a lot of, I think, I don't even mean this in a derogatory way, but the casual fan would all have ahead of South Carolina. And they're all missing a very key component to what that could be a key for the 2025 season.
Yeah. And that's, again, the quarterback thing is where it all starts. Running back, what do they do there? And I know was a Faison they brought in. You still got Attaway, you still got Jawan Howell, but like that to me is, Rocket Sanders was a big piece of why you were successful last year and a nice compliment. But Virginia Tech, I don't think is going to be very good. I think you should take care of them in the first game, South Carolina State, and then you get Vandy in week 3 and Diego Pavia's back, the revenge tour. And then, as the schedule goes on, I mean, road trip at Mizzou's not easy. Home against Kentucky. Nobody has any idea what they're going to look like. They completely portaled their whole roster. It's like John Calipari took control of Kentucky's football team. They're like, guys, everybody out, whole new roster.
Everybody
what
out.
is this? It's like all new people.
Yeah.
But road trip to LSU won't be easy, but you should have beat them last year. You were with them the whole way. OU will be improved, but you get them at home. Alabama, again, big question around the quarterback. Road trips at Ole Miss and A&M. That's like the most difficult stretch right there. Playing Oklahoma, Bama at home, then at Ole Miss and at A&M. You'll come back home, you'll be Coastal. And then what is Clemson? What stood out to me this week, Marler, was looking at the way too early 2026 mock drafts. One of the ones that were out there had 3 Clemson dudes going in like the top 15.
Yeah.
That's pretty big. All defensively, defensive end, defensive tackle, I think a linebacker. Like Clemson's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Clemson's gonna be good. So they're gonna want that payback too. So that one will be interesting.
No, I agree. We got plenty more to get to you with. Not plenty more. We got a lot to get to you with though. Before we do, I do want to take a quick little break here. When we come back, I want to talk to you about how far you think Sellers can carry this team if he is somebody that's going to open the upper echelon. But then I also do want to talk about the schedule and talk about the teams we've already talked about. Which teams in this conference could be a surprise that people aren't talking enough about right now as we head into May. Before we do that, want to give a quick shout out to our friends over here at Monarch Money. You guys have heard me talk about Monarch Money before. You're going to hear me talk about them again, and with very, very good reason. Now, do you ever check your bank account and wonder, listen, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, Chief Financial Officer. Learn what that meant. Giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending, all the above in one place at your fingertips. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Listen, when I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. And the best part about it all is that there's several apps that tell you they can do this, but it's tiring and exhausting to juggle multiple apps at a time. You can just use Monarch, check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Because listen, with Monarch, again, you're not just managing your money, you are building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LockedOnCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LockedOnCollege for half off your first year. We'll be right back with more Locked On Gamecocks right after this. All right, little just peel behind the onion here, behind the scenes. Chris Gordy having some internet issues. Listen. This is a big win for me. Not that I wish that upon you, brother. But I know I'm the one that usually has them. All right, getting back into this, man. I'm high on South Carolina for a number of reasons. I do think it's so interesting to talk about the different layers, at least how my brain works, which is not how most normal brains work, I'm sure. And I don't mean that in a positive way for me necessarily. I just mean in general. But when you think about, like I said, the foundational thing, what you're looking at, is it quarterback play? South Carolina's got a plus there. Then you look at the schedule. Like, I hate to say it, and we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about them this offseason, but, man, Clemson is going to be good. Clemson's going to be real good. The thing with Clemson that is frustrating is I know they have LSU first, and they bookend their season with SEC teams. Team that went 0-3 against the SEC last year, so that does bode well for the conference. But, I mean, man, they have a cakewalk playing in the ACC. My question is this. In the SEC, like I would agree with you. I think Georgia and Texas probably at the top. Bama, I think, is going to be really, really good because the defense, don't know what they're going to have at quarterback, if that's going to be an improvement or not. LSU should be great after what they did in the portal. They also get South Carolina at home. That's a big one. But, like, what are some teams – and I'll give you both sides. What are some teams that maybe we're too high on going into the season and some teams that you think could end up being not like CFP contenders, but much better than people are thinking right now as we're in May?
Yeah, look, I would say be careful on the Florida hype. Yeah. I like DJ Lagway a ton. I think he's going to be an awesome quarterback. That shoulder injury is not just going to disappear. Like, it's a real thing. He's going to need surgery on it eventually. They think he can play through this and be fine. And he may be just fine. But the schedule is still brutal. And if he gets banged up at all, Florida's in trouble because that schedule is brutal. I don't necessarily like the quarterback depth. So, to me, I think there's a lot of people buying into how Florida finished and going, ho, look out for the Gators. They're going to LSU week 3, and, they get Texas at home and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, this thing could easily go sideways. And it's 6-6 for Billy Napier, and he's out again. So that's just one. Again, I don't know if everybody's high on the Gators, but most stuff I've read is people being optimistic on the Gators.
It's spot on, dude. Dude, I tell you what, and I hope I'm not cutting you off because I agree with you here. I said that to Mike the other day. I was like, I don't mean to cut you off. And he was like, yeah, you do. You do it every time we talk. And I was like, crap. No, so here's the thing. I think the Florida thing, and this may hit home maybe a little bit too close to home with some SEC or some South Carolina fans, and that is, what it reminds me of a lot is that 2022 South Carolina team, kind of just middle of the road, kind of just plugging along, not really doing anything that was too crazy or, like I think they had a win against Kentucky that year that was like 14-10 or something. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but not like an insanely successful year. They get Tennessee at home and they score 60 plus and run out of fireworks and celebrating it. Right. Then they beat Clemson in a crazy win 2 weeks later. And everyone started talking like, oh my God, dude, like Spencer Rattler's coming back next year. They closed out so strong in November. And it got the hype train rolling, and it was like that just ended up not being great. So that's what kind of what Florida reminds me of. I'm looking at South Carolina's schedule right now, okay, and I want you to tell me a game you think they have the best chance of winning. And I'm going to give you just the upsets because I think they beat Virginia Tech. I think they beat South Carolina State. I think they beat Vanderbilt. Love that the two of those three are at home. I think they will have a big contingent of fans with the hype and all that kind of stuff going into Atlanta. So that'll be like a home game. I don't think Missouri's going to be tough. I think Mizzou lost all of its best pieces. I would just say be careful because I thought Brady Cook was just okay, but I thought losing Cody Schrader was going to hurt them, and they seemed to be okay with that combination of Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll, and they ran the ball just fine as a group. And Brady Cook, with Luther Burden and crew, made some plays. But you're right. I think a lot on them depends on how good is Bo Prabula. Like that's the biggest question for me with Mizzou. If he's ready to go and he's a little dual threat, like that's the film I've watched on him, like he's got some skills. And then the kind of quiet, like all the big transfer portal guys that have come into the SEC that made headlines, the one not many people have talked about is Ahmad Hardy. Coming from Louisiana Monroe, 1,000-yard rusher. Yeah. Like that's a guy that look at Drinkwitz's track record since he's been there. Every year he's had a running back. Like every year somebody from Larry Roundtree to you run down the list, he's had a dude. And Ahmad Hardy kind of fits that. So I would just say be careful with it. Yes, Mizzou lost a ton and losing all the receivers they have. What is Marquise Johnson, the only real one with experience back? I know they bring Kevin Coleman in from Mississippi State, but that kid's going to be a stud. I think Coleman, that kid is the one you have. I think out of all of like the sleepers around the SEC that not on South Carolina, I think of all those, that's the one I think is going to have the biggest breakout.
Yeah, and their O-line should be really strong. They bring back a bunch of guys with Caden Green, Connor Tollison, all that. So, but yeah, look, it's going to be tough. It's going to be on the road, but that maybe get lucky if you're South Carolina. Maybe it's like an 11 a.m. game, maybe a 2:30. So, playing at night at Mizzou, I wouldn't be petrified of, but it would be a lot easier if that's a day game. But yeah, right now on paper, I mean, it's advantage. Who's the best player of both teams? Lenore Sellers. So yeah. It's advantage Sellers.
I would actually rather play that game at night than because I think the sleepy 11 a.m. start out in Como is what you have to be fearful of more than anything. My question was going to be this instead, though. I'm looking at 3 games all on the road. I think you have to win at least one of these, maybe 2, if you're going to make the playoff. Because Bama and Clemson at home, you got to split one of those 2. Like, because you have to find a way to get to 10-2, right? At LSU on October 11th, after a week off, by the way, at Ole Miss, and then a week off at A&M. Tell me which game there South Carolina has the best chance of winning, because they're going to be an underdog in all of them.
Man, I'd say at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I just, again, go back to everything they lost. Now, I might go back and eat my words if Austin Simmons is awesome and crushing everybody. But I just, again, the losses that Mississippi State, that Ole Miss has, I mean, go look at their receiving corps. Like, it's all transfers. It's all dudes that have done it at other schools, but I haven't seen them doing the SEC yet.
That's true.
Dazon Stribling, and I mean, throw in every name, Caleb Odom from Bama. I mean, it's a lot of unprovens. Now the backfield was an issue for Ole Miss last year. It was supposed to get Logan Diggs back healthy from the LSU transfer.
Yeah.
But man, like they grabbed some dudes out of the portal, Damian Taylor, Kejuan Lacey, but like Ole Miss just got a ton of questions to me, man. Like they've done a nice job in the portal, but the portal giveth and the portal taketh away. As good as their portal haul was last year, you can look at another case of LSU a couple years ago. They bombed a lot of their transfer portal guys, particularly in the secondary. So it's not always home runs. It's not always big hits that you bring in through the portal. And if Ole Miss misses on any of these guys, it could be an 8-5 type season for Ole Miss, and that's a game that I think is winnable for South Carolina. Again, I hope it's not at night. If it's a day game, afternoon game, something like that, again, I think that's one that the Gamecocks can certainly win.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, we got one more question for you. I'll let you start thinking about it now. Don't let your internet cut out. Not like me, perfect internet always. My question is going to be this. I want one – it's not even a question. Give me one hot take about South Carolina. When we come back, Locked On Gamecocks continues right after this. All right, Gordy, here's the deal. Let's just have an honesty hour here. You and I are old friends. I made a homemade Caesar salad dressing from scratch, and things are not going well for me right now. I don't feel good. Let's just get out of here on this question. One hot take, one bold take on South Carolina for next season. Go.
They lead the SEC in sacks.
Like allowed?
Like they get after it next year, and they lead the
God, did you see the look of terror on my face when you said it? Because they've given up 41 sacks into the last 2 seasons. So I was like, oh no. Yeah, no, I think they'll I think they're going to get after. I mean, look, Dylan Stewart I love, and I think he's poised for a monster year. By the way, our lads may want to get on their depth chart here because they've got Dylan Stewart listed as the backup to Damon Clowney at right defensive end. So that's not right. No, Clowney. I mean, listen, Stewart's got to earn it. He's got to earn it this year for sure.
I think he earned it in that NIL deal he got to stick around in Columbia. But I like you got Brian Thomas, you got Dindy Brownlow coming in through portal. I like the Clowney addition. I think that they're going to get after it. I think Dylan Stewart has a chance to lead the conference in sacks this year. And as a group, they might be up there. So again, yes, for a hot take, it's a hot take. Another one I could maybe sell you on is Razul Faison ends up being a top 5 rusher in the SEC. I mean, again,
I don't think that's a hot take at all. I think that'll happen for sure.
Okay. Yeah, and if that happens, it means good things have happened for South Carolina, and they're 10-2 or better, making the playoff.
Agreed. All right, Gordy, tell everyone where they can find you, and we'll have to do this again soon, brother.
Yeah, Locked On at SEC, wherever you get your podcast, talking all things about the Southeastern Conference on a daily basis. We update you with all the latest news going on. I'm on top of that portal, man. I did an interview the other day, and I had a brain fart on 3 different names because there's been so many damn names going in this year and out the other on transfer portal and all that. So that's why I have all my notes and everything I got to look to and reference because it's a madhouse right now. But yeah, Locked On SEC. We've had some great guests this offseason as well. We had Caden Durham, the LSU running back, on a couple of weeks ago. We've got some other special guests lined up coming up to these next couple of weeks. Working on a Gamecock player. We'll let you know when we get that one out and do a little crossover here for you on Locked On Gamecocks.
Love it, brother. We will talk to you soon. We appreciate it.
All right. Stay safe.